Hi guys, so my good friend Jeff Taylor, who's a Brexiteer, came up with this, he uploaded this video recently where he suggested that the Northern Ireland Protocol should be ditched, should be thrown in the bin and replaced with, well, nothing. So let's get into the video and I'll respond to his comments.
The Irish Border Protocol in the withdrawal agreement that kick-started the implementation period and signed up to by Boris Johnson is patently not working. The protocol was designed to maintain the balance between the Unionists and Nationalists on the island of Ireland by respecting the Good Friday Agreement, so favouring neither side. The GFA is a pair of agreements between the UK and the Republic of Ireland, which has worked extremely well in ending just about all of the violence of the Troubles. But now the EU has managed to get itself into the mix while on a power and territory hunting mission.
No, this is nothing to do with the EU wanting power or anything like that. The Northern Ireland Protocol exists in order to allow Northern Ireland to remain part of the single market. Now, that's necessary because there were two other options. Well, there were three options. So there were three possibilities. There was the United Kingdom, so Great Britain and Northern Ireland would remain within the single market and the customs union. There was a border in the Irish Sea or a border on the island of Ireland. Now, Brexiteers like Jeff and Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nigel Farage rejected the idea of having the UK remain within the single market and the customs union. So then there are two other options: to have a border in the Irish Sea or to have a border on the island of Ireland. Now, the problem with having the border on the island of Ireland is that it runs into conflict with the Good Friday Agreement. So let's have a look at what I'm talking about here. I want to read from Brexiteers themselves and what they said about a border on the island of Ireland. Now, you have to remember that the Good Friday Agreement is about eliminating physical border posts and checks on the island of Ireland. It doesn't mention anything really about checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It's about borders and checks on the island of Ireland. So it says here, in September 2016, the then UK Brexit Secretary David Davis stated that the UK government would not seek a return to a hard border between the UK and the Republic of Ireland. So there would be no, this is a Brexiteer, the Brexit Secretary said, we don't want a border on the island of Ireland. In October 2016, The Guardian reported that the British proposals to avoid a hard border by seeking to shift the front line of British immigration controls to Ireland's ports and airports had received signals of support by some members of Enda Kenny's government. However, by 2017, a spokesman for the Irish government under Leo Varadkar stated these reports had been misinformed and that there was no question of UK officials acting as border agents in Ireland. It goes on to say, in its white paper on Brexit, the UK government reiterated its commitment to the Belfast Agreement with regard to Northern Ireland's status. It said that the UK government's clearly stated preference is to retain Northern Ireland's current constitutional position as part of the UK, but with strong links to Ireland. So the Northern Ireland Protocol, the Belfast Agreement, also called the Good Friday Agreement, is about not having a border on the island of Ireland. So if Brexiteers didn't want the UK, Great Britain and Northern Ireland to remain part of the single market and the customs union, and the British government said we don't want a border on the island of Ireland, well then what was the other possibility? The border in the Irish Sea.
And every day it becomes clearer that Brussels really does believe that the price the UK has to pay for Brexit is Northern Ireland.
No, this is not about punishing Great Britain. This was the only option left. There was an option about 2 or 3 years, 2 years ago. There was an option for the UK to remain within the single market and the customs union, the entire UK. But Brexiteers rejected that. There would be no need for a protocol if that had been the outcome. And it was never actually an aspect of Brexit. There was no mention of, we have to leave the single market and the customs union. The Brexiteers back in 2016 never mentioned that. Some of them may have said it, others, but there was no official line on leaving the single market and customs union. On the contrary, many Brexiteers said only a lunatic, only a crazy person would leave the single market and the customs union. We will be able to leave the EU and remain part of the single market and the customs union. That was a line from some Brexiteers. But of course, when you ask one Brexiteer what they voted for, they'll tell you something different to what another Brexiteer will say that what they voted for.
And they have been doing their level best to separate Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK throughout the entire process.
No, Brexiteers have been. Once again, the EU put it on the table. Do you want the UK to remain within the single market and the customs union? Some Brexiteers said yes, but the hardline Brexiteers said no. And I would have to put Jeff into that camp as well. They said, no, we don't want to be part of the single market and the customs union. So then it fell back to, okay, then we have to have a border in the Irish Sea, or we have to have a border on the island of Ireland. If there's a border on the island of Ireland, it's going to run into conflict with the Good Friday Agreement, which Brexiteers within the government said we're not going to undermine the Good Friday Agreement. So the only other option was a border in the Irish Sea. You can't get away from this. This is the reality.
They've used the GFA and now the border protocol to keep piling the pressure on. But in doing so, they display seeming total ignorance of the situation in Northern Ireland.
Jeff, I don't think it's the EU that is showing ignorance of the situation in Northern Ireland. How is it possible that Brexiteers within Boris Johnson's government and Theresa May's government said, yes, there will be no border on the island of Ireland, and are now complaining about the protocol in order to make sure that there isn't a border on the island of Ireland?
They have completely dismissed the whole Unionist community as irrelevant to their aims of taking over.
No, it's not the EU that has dismissed the Unionist community, it's the British government. Because the British government told the DUP and the Unionist community in Northern Ireland there will be no border on the island of Ireland, and there will be no border in the Irish Sea, which was impossible because there had to be a border on one side or the other. Boris Johnson is even to this day saying that there's no border in the Irish Sea, when there clearly is a border in the Irish Sea. Now, you can't blame the EU for this. If Boris Johnson and the Tories are lying, continuing up to this day, lying to the people of Northern Ireland, and the people in Northern Ireland can see there's a bloody border there, how can you blame the EU for this?
And as I've said before, a border down the Irish Sea is to Unionists what a border across the island of Ireland is to nationalists.
No, it's not the same thing, because the UK government signed up to that. It's not, and also it's not the same as having is it like saying a border in Scotland is the same as the border between England and France? No, it's not the same thing. One is inside the country and the other is outside the country. The amount of traffic and movement across a physical border is very different to one across the sea. A land border and a sea border, they're completely different.
And when Brussels uses that border down the Irish Sea as a geopolitical weapon, it can only increase anxiety and anger amongst those that wish Northern Ireland to remain in the UK.
This is extremely frustrating because the problem, he's trying to shift the focus away from the people who actually created this problem, including himself, and place the blame on the EU. The EU never voted for Brexit. The EU never wanted Brexit. You people wanted Brexit. The EU said, if you vote for Brexit, if you want Brexit, there will be consequences. And now there are consequences. And instead of actually saying, actually, yes, you were right, no, we're going to attack the EU. The EU didn't want this. And the EU has been trying to fix the problem by presenting options. And the Conservative Party and the Brexiteers respond with nothing. They're talking now about ditching the Northern Ireland Protocol. And replace it with what, Jeff? Replace it with nothing. Look, we have this problem. Okay, let's try and fix the problem. No, we don't want to fix the problem. What? Just get rid of the protocol. Okay, and replace it with what? Unicorns.
Even before the end of the Brexit implementation period, Brussels Eurocrats were boasting about slapping tariffs on all goods going from England, Wales and Scotland into Northern Ireland just to freeze our internal market up.
Citation needed.
That was why the PM Boris Johnson inserted those draft clauses into the UK Internal Market Bill.
No, he didn't put them in to protect Northern Ireland. It was a bargaining chip. He thought, okay, Northern Ireland is a problem, is an issue, is a concern for both the EU and the Republic of Ireland. Now, I'm doing a negotiation for a trade deal. So what I'm going to do is, I'm stuck here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break some windows to get the EU's attention, to frighten them into giving me a better trade deal. It's extremely cynical. He was putting the peace in Northern Ireland at risk in order for him to save face. That's what it was all about. It wasn't about protecting the people of Northern Ireland. How would you be protecting the people of Northern Ireland by risking peace? There was an option some time ago about protecting the people of Northern Ireland, protecting peace in Northern Ireland, and you Brexiteers voted against that. You demanded it not happen.
And then the EU tries to do the dirty with no discussion at all and uses Article 16 of the protocol to stop vaccines going from the EU into Northern Ireland via the border with Southern Ireland.
Now, this is once again another lie. The EU did not invoke Article 16. I thought we had resolved this mistake. I thought this had been debunked already. The EU did not invoke Article 16. They were considering invoking Article 16 and they did not. Now, when the EU considered invoking Article 16, people lost their bloody minds. Boris Johnson has threatened to invoke Article 16 on numerous occasions, and we don't hear a peep from anyone.
At least they saw the sense on that one. But in the meantime, the protocol has caused economic problems in Northern Ireland, and it has caused the diversion of trade.
It's not the protocol, Jesus Christ, it's not the protocol that has caused these problems, it's Brexit that has caused these problems. In the same way, it's not the checks that have caused the problems at the port of Dover. They're a symptom of the problem. The problem is Brexit itself. None of these problems existed last year. Why is that? Have you asked yourself that, Jeff? Of course, he's going to say, well, it's because the EU implemented this protocol. But it's not the protocol, it's bloody Brexit.
And that diversion of trade is exactly what Brussels wants. But Article 16 of the protocol works both ways and caters for that very situation.
Okay, he's talking about Article 16. So let's have a look at Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol. I don't know if, guys, you can see this. Let me try and zoom it a bit. So it says here, if the application of the protocol leads to serious economic, societal or environmental difficulties that are liable to persist or to division of trade, the Union, the European Union, or the United Kingdom may unilaterally take appropriate safeguard measures. Such safeguard measures shall be restricted with regard to their scope and duration to what is strictly necessary in order to remedy the situation. Priority should be given to such measures as will not disturb the functioning of the protocol. So what it means basically is that part of the protocol under Article 16 is it allows you to suspend part of the protocol in order to fix a problem. When we talk about the vaccines, that's what the European Union were considering doing, was suspending part of the protocol in order to get over this problem of the vaccines. They actually didn't invoke Article 16, but Article 16 is designed to protect the protocol. You can see in the very last line, priority should be given to such measures as will least disturb the functioning of the protocol. So it's to protect the protocol. It doesn't mean suspending the protocol. It's actually the opposite. Now, what it means is you suspend part of the protocol in order to fix the problem. But what Brexiteers are suggesting is you suspend the protocol completely. Then why are you talking about Article 16? You have to provide a solution. Article 16 is a very useful tool. If there's a problem, you suspend that part of the protocol and you sit down and we try to resolve it in a very limited amount of time. It's not open-ended. It has to be time limited. It's to protect the entire protocol. I don't understand why this is so difficult to understand.
It therefore allows the UK, after a period of negotiations, to use Article 16 itself to suspend any rules that get in the way of our trade with Northern Ireland.
No, not any rules, and it's not after a period of negotiation. You invoke Article 16 and then you negotiate. You sit down and you try to fix the problem. But it's not about anything. It's about that specific problem. If you want to invoke it later for something else, then that's okay. But it's not open-ended and it doesn't cover everything.
Now, Michael Gove, the Minister for the Cabinet Office, recently wrote to his opposite number in Brussels, Vice President of the EU Commission, Maros Šefčovič. In his letter, Gove detailed the changes that needed to be made as part of the ongoing process of making the deal work. However, what he received back was a reply that former Brexit Minister David Jones described as, "It is pompous, bombastic, sarcastic, patronising and threatening."
I don't believe it was the case, but why would people who had signed up to a protocol... Remember, it was the Brexiteers that are having a problem with the protocol. Not the European Union didn't have a problem with the protocol. The European Union didn't say, sorry, we signed this protocol last year and we forgot to read it. Boris Johnson's party agreed to the protocol, agreed to the withdrawal agreement, and didn't actually read it. And now they're having problems with it. Now, of course, no system is perfect. So it makes sense for people to sit down but the European Union's response is, there isn't a problem here, or if there is a problem, why did you agree to it before signing it? This is a case of the Brexiteers agreeing to something without reading it and then later finding problems with it. The problem is not the protocol. The problem is Brexit. This is the consequence of Brexit. I don't think the protocol can actually fix this problem. Part of it can be suspended for a period of time in order to try and get over these problems. But the fundamental core issue here is Brexit. Unless you suspend Brexit, which I don't think the Brexiteers would be too happy about, we're going to have these problems. A very simple solution would be for the UK, Great Britain and Northern Ireland to rejoin the single market and the customs union. But Brexiteers don't want that either. So Brexiteers... We can present solutions to the Brexiteers, but they don't want to hear those solutions. They don't want any solutions.
It shows an intent on the part of the EU to put further obstacles in the way of trade between Northern Ireland and mainland GB. By triggering the Article 16 procedure at the end of January...
Which is a lie. They did not trigger Article 16.
The EU have shown their true colours. Despite Mr Šefčovič's protestations to the contrary, they have shown that they were willing to weaponise the Northern Ireland Protocol aggressively at the drop of a hat.
So do you have a problem with that? Of course, it's untrue. They didn't invoke it. They didn't trigger it. They were considering it. But Boris Johnson, 2 weeks earlier, threatened to trigger Article 16, and Brexiteers didn't have a problem with that. The DUP didn't have a problem with that. He did it also last week during Prime Minister's questions. He was asked a question at the very end of Prime Minister's questions, he was asked a question by a member of the DUP, and Boris Johnson's response was, and we're willing to invoke Article 16 or trigger Article 16 if necessary. So you can't criticise the European Union for considering invoking Article 16 when Boris Johnson has said on numerous occasions that he's willing to do it.
The United Kingdom cannot allow this to continue. The Prime Minister has already indicated that we are willing to
There we go. We can't allow this to continue. We can't allow the EU to threaten to trigger Article 16. We're going to trigger Article 16.
Trigger Article 16 ourselves. And unless the EU adopt a more sensible, constructive attitude very soon, that is precisely what we should do.
But this is not a threat. See, this seems like a threat to the public. Oh, the public saying, look, Boris Johnson is acting tough again. He's going to trigger Article 16, even though we don't know what Article 16 means. Article 16, as I said before, is about suspending part of the protocol in order to fix a problem. But there's no point invoking it if you're not willing to fix the problem. So Boris Johnson is trying to use it as a threat. But the EU understand that it's not a threat. And they understand that Boris Johnson it's typical in his nature to issue threats and then back off. Because he's a liar.
And another Tory Brexiteer MP, Andrew Bridgen, said, the Šefčovič letter shows that the EU's professed concern for Northern Ireland during the negotiations of the future relationship was a complete fraud.
This is complete projection, isn't it? Brexiteers saying, how dare the EU how dare the EU treat Northern Ireland with contempt? Their concern was a complete fraud. Brexiteers are saying this. The EU once again said to Brexiteers, to Theresa May, to Boris Johnson, to others in the government at the time, they said, there is this option. The UK remains within the single market and the customs union, and then the status quo remains for Northern Ireland. But they said no. They said, we want a hard border. We want a hard border. And then, as I said here, they said, we're going to defend the Good Friday Agreement. The Good Friday Agreement says there shouldn't be a border on the island of Ireland.
For the EU, Ireland has served its purpose during the negotiations, and the protocol will be used as a stick to beat the UK forever, and any collateral damage to the Irish Republic and inter-community relations is considered a price worth paying for the EU.
This is disgusting. This is extremely disgusting. Brexiteers don't give a crap about the people of Northern Ireland. If they did, they would have said, look, we'll sacrifice this part of Brexit in order to protect Northern Ireland. But they didn't do that. There was an option to protect Northern Ireland from the current status of having a protocol. But the Brexiteers said, no, we don't care about Northern Ireland. We want to leave. We want to leave the single market and the customs union. We don't care about the consequences of that. We're actually happy if other people suffer. Because it gives us some joy. Ramona tears or whatever they call it. But now we're seeing a difficult situation in Northern Ireland. I don't know how it can be resolved. There is a problem. The problem is that people in the Unionist community think that the EU has thrown them under a bus, when in reality it's the Brexiteers that have thrown them under a bus, and they're not willing to open their eyes and realise there was a possibility in the past for us to remain as we are, connected to the rest of the UK, but some people decided, no, we don't want that.
In his letter, Šefčovič said that the border protocol is the only way to protect the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, preserving peace and stability and avoiding a hard border on the island of Ireland. And that for me is the whole problem. Brussels has no understanding of the Unionist views and concerns.
More projection.
Brussels does not factor the Unionist community into the equation. Brussels thinks that by ramming the single market into Northern Ireland and trying to drive the UK internal market out, it can increase its power footprint.
Once again, what is the option here, Jeff? There was a border on the island of Ireland or a border in the Irish Sea. There was, of course, the other option, but you didn't want that. So what is your solution to this problem?
They have no idea what separating Great Britain from Northern Ireland actually means. They also have no idea that in doing so it is also a breach of the Good Friday Agreement.
No, it is not, because there's no reference. I don't know if Jeff has actually read the Good Friday Agreement, but there's no reference that I could find to a border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, or border checks. There are numerous references to border checks between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and the elimination of those border checks, the cooperation of North-South bodies, the cooperation on issues such as language or transport or health. There are a number of different issues where there is cooperation. There's, as far as I can find, no references to the border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. That's not part of the Northern Ireland, the Good Friday Agreement.
That they are not signatories to, but have wheedled their way into. Brussels should start listening to the Republic of Ireland's Foreign Minister Simon Coveney, who told the FT that the EU needs to be more amenable to UK requests, and that pragmatism and flexibility within the confines of the protocol actually strengthens the protocol. It doesn't weaken it.
And I agree. Article 16 of the protocol allows you to suspend part of the protocol in order to get over some sort of problem. But Brexiteers don't want to invoke Article 16. They want to throw away the entire protocol completely.
Although one has to say that the likes of Coveney did seem to be on the EU side over this whole affair right up until it started to potentially bite his republic in the backside.
Not sure what he's talking about there, but the Republic of Ireland is part of the EU. The Republic of Ireland wants to maintain peace on the island of Ireland. The Republic of Ireland didn't vote for Brexit. The Republic of Ireland didn't want Brexit, but they respected the views of the British people. Even when British Brexiteers and the British government were saying, "Don't worry, Northern Ireland is not an issue. Northern Ireland is nothing to worry about. Northern Ireland would be perfectly fine under Brexit."
And as to the north-south border, no one cared when the Republic told their police very recently, the Garda, to make it hard and fine people crossing from the north to the south unless they had a good reason to breach their COVID rules.
Oh my God. So you don't understand the difference between a physical border and a mobile border. Or a physical border check and a mobile border check. The COVID checks are a temporary measure. They're not a physical border post. It's about physical border posts. About eliminating... I wish Jeff would actually... I'll send Jeff a copy of the Good Friday Agreement so he can read it.
But were the UK to do similar, it would attract worldwide condemnation.
No, it wouldn't. Because it's in the same way that Brexiteers were saying, countries within Schengen will never be able to put up a border to restrict the movement of people. And during the pandemic, the European Union said we're allowing member states to suspend Schengen in order to protect their countries. So when Brexiteers say something is impossible, well, it's not really impossible.
Anyway, what I'm hoping that Michael Gove will, at the very least, do, will wait for the requisite legal period in the protocol, then trigger Article 16 from the UK side to protect the UK internal market that the EU is so determined to rupture.
What are you talking about? There's nothing in Article 16 to protect the UK internal market. Once again, do you actually understand what Article 16 is about?
But better still, Boris should legislate to drop the whole protocol nonsense.
And there we have it. There we finally have it. At 7 minutes 44, we don't want a solution. We don't care about solutions. I'm sorry this video has been so long. It wasn't my intention. But we had to get to this point. Brexiteers have no solutions to any problems. You know, they have no practical... No, they have solutions, but they're not practical solutions. You know, we can't export our fish, or we just convince people to eat more fish. What? We have this problem in Northern Ireland. Let's just throw away the safety measure. Let's just throw away the agreement that we signed up to, that we didn't bother to read. And because we didn't bother to read it, we didn't understand it. We didn't actually and instead of actually telling the people of Northern Ireland what to expect, we lied to them. And instead of actually trying to fix it, well, let's just throw it away. Unfortunately, people like Jeff have a very powerful voice, and a lot of people listen to him. A lot of people listen to the Brexiteers. And the Brexiteers don't have practical solutions to these issues. Their response is just throw it away, or eat more fish, or some other ridiculous point. That's all I have to say on this. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?